Sometimes it's necessary to relocate plants in our landscape. We may need to move some plants to accommodate a new feature like a patio or a walkway. We may need to thin out some overgrown plantings and move some of those plants. We also may just want to move some of our plants around to create new combinations in the garden. Things like perennials and ornamental grasses are pretty easy to move. We just take a shovel, pop them out of the ground, and tote them away to their new home. But when it comes to moving something like a pretty good sized shrub, there's a little bit more involved. There are a few things we need to consider in this instance. First, we need to ask ourselves, is the shrub worth moving in the first place? We probably don't want to waste a lot of time trying to dig and relocate some undesirable plant like maybe a gangly privet or a scale-infested euonymus, unless of course they have some sentimental value. Another thing we need to think about is that the longer a shrub has been in place, the more difficult it will be to move it. And obviously the larger the plant is, the more work that's going to be required. So we may be better off just to discard the plants and start all over with some new shrubs. But if you're willing to put in the effort, it can be done successfully. If you're going to move a shrub all at once without any preparation or prior root pruning, the best time of the year to do that is in the late winter or early spring before the plant has broken dormancy. If we move the plant at that time, we can take advantage of that explosion of growth that takes place above ground and below ground, and that will help that plant get reestablished after it's transplanted. If you know ahead of time, a year or even 2 years in advance, that you're going to be moving a plant, you can better prepare it to be moved by pruning its roots. And the time to do that is, again, in the spring or early spring before the plant breaks dormancy, or in the fall as the temperatures start to cool off. But I like to just take a sharpshooter, like we've got here, sharpshooter shovel, and just start going around the outside of the plant and sinking that shovel, jumping up and down on it, whatever you need to do to slice through those roots. Then we gently work the shovel out of the soil, and we just continue on around slicing through those roots. Now the sharpshooter works very well to do this because the blade of the shovel is heavier than a typical shovel, so it'll slice through those roots easier, and also just the length of the blade, just the longer blade, enables you to get deeper, to cut those roots way deep. Well, I am just estimating the size of the root ball on this multi-stemmed crepe myrtle, but there is a formula that you can use to judge the size of root ball that you would need for a single-stemmed shrub or tree. And here to tell us about how to figure that out is Studio Garden Manager Laura Payne.
The easiest way to determine the size root ball needed when transplanting a single trunk, tree, or shrub is what we call the 10 times method. That's when you take a ruler or a tape measure and you measure from the base or ground level up about 1 foot on the tree. At that point, we'll measure the diameter or the caliber of the tree. This tree here is about 1.5 inches, so we would take 1.5 and multiply that by 10, which gives us a 15-inch root ball. So the top of this root ball, when you transplant this tree, should be 15 inches.
Well, that's how you determine the size of root ball for a single-stemmed shrub. With this multi-stem crepe myrtle, again, I've just kind of estimated on my experience about how big a root ball that a crepe myrtle will need. And in general, crepe myrtles are pretty forgiving when you move them in the landscape. I finished cutting all the roots around the shrub here, and I've also dug a little trench that we can keep water in during the dry times of the year. And by cutting all the roots of our shrub, what we're doing is we're forcing more roots to branch and start growing inside this root ball. So we will keep that water in the trench. That will also help more of those roots to form. It'd be a good idea also to mulch this cut root ball to further help conserve moisture. And then also periodically just come out with your sharpshooter and again run around the perimeter, cutting any roots that try to bridge the gap. Well, these steps are what you will go through to prepare a shrub to be moved later in the year, a year or two down the road. But if you're going to move the shrub as it is without any preparation, we do all these steps and then we start digging away at the soil outside the root ball. Well, we've dug this root ball to a good size, and as you can tell, we have to do quite a bit of digging in order to get up under the root ball to cut it loose and to break it free from the soil. You've noticed we've kind of shaved that root ball to where it's sort of a top-shaped ball of soil, and that's perfectly acceptable because most of the roots are up in the top part of the ground here. At this point, if we wanted to, we could come in with some burlap and wrap it around this root ball and pin it up to where it's really secure. But since we've already got our hole dug and it's holding together really well, the crepe myrtle, which is pretty forgiving anyway, will hold together, I think, pretty well. We don't need to wrap that up with the burlap, as long as we're careful. Now, when we were digging this, we made sure that we didn't step on this root ball or pry against it with our shovels or anything like that, because we want that soil to hold together. We don't want it to break up. Another thing we did while we were digging was that we took a lot of the clay from the very bottom of this hole and piled it up here over to the side, so whenever we're finished with this moving this shrub, we can just put that back in here, and that clay that was down in the subsoil, we can put that right back where it belongs. We won't mix it up into the topsoil and mess up the planting bed here. But I've just got a few more shovel whacks to go here to break this completely free. You can hear the sharpshooter cut through those roots. And I think we're almost there. Well, the next thing we need to do is to get this plant up to ground level. And one method of doing that is to tilt it back and forth, filling in the hole until the root ball is setting on the ground. And now Kevin Gregg, our videographer, is going to come over and we're going to attempt to get this root ball up to ground level. So Kevin just kind of tilts it back this way. There we go. Make sure all those roots are cut. Feel pretty loose. Pull it back this way. Well, now we've got the plant at ground level. And as I mentioned earlier, the larger the shrub, the more work it's going to be. And this has definitely been a lot of work getting it out of the ground and getting it to where it is now. If you have a really large shrub, you don't want to hurt your back Probably be a good idea to get some equipment or some sort of hoist and lift the plant onto a trailer or some sort of heavy-duty cart. Well, again, it's important at this point when you move the plant to keep that root ball intact. Well, this one is the size that I think we can move it with our wheelbarrow. I'll just bring this over, lay it to the side here, and Kevin Gregg again will help me out here, and we'll try to lift it into the wheelbarrow. And we'll just upright the wheelbarrow. And again, being very careful to not disturb the root ball. Well, you can see we've got our hole dug here. I'm just going to bring the wheelbarrow up and we're going to lay it back in, kind of in reverse of what we did earlier. So again, Kevin's going to come and help me here, and we'll lay the wheelbarrow over and get the plant gently into the hole. Pull the wheelbarrow out, I guess. And it's a perfect fit. Well, now that we've got the shrub in its new home, we've got the water hose going there, we'll let it soak, let it settle in. We'll definitely bring in some mulch around the plant. And during the summertime, we'll make sure that we water it during periods of drought, let it get those roots reestablished. And being a crepe myrtle, we will prune it back some. We'll definitely cut off all these old seed heads from last year. We'll probably just wait, see what branches survive the transplanting. Once it leafs out all it's going to, then we'll prune that back. But again, if you can plan ahead, go ahead and prune the roots on those shrubs that you're going to relocate. Get those new roots to develop inside that root ball. That way it'll survive the transplanting process a lot better. And again, if you're going to move a shrub all at once, do it here in the springtime, early spring, before the plant breaks dormancy. And again, watering the plant through the drought is going to be key to its survival. And this crepe myrtle should settle in quite well.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.